Welcome to Buried Secrets, a podcast about the paranormal, the occult, and weird and forgotten history. I'm Chris. So this is maybe like the 8th installment of my series looking at the Old Alton Bridge, or Goatman's Bridge, which is located near Denton, Texas. This time, I want to loop back to some of the trickster stories that I mentioned in the first episode of this series, and I want to go through a timeline of the Goatman's Bridge legend as it is now known. So my understanding is that the current most popular legend about the Goatman's Bridge has been circulating for some time, but as I talked about in the first episode of this series, there was a clear difference between pre-July 2008 stories about the Goatman's Bridge and post-July 2008 stories. My sense is that this was the moment when one version of the story was codified into something resembling the truth, at least as far as the internet was concerned. And it also seems to be when some of the details of the story were fleshed out. So, for example, as far as I've been able to tell, that's when the Goatman was given the name Oscar Washburn. So, like pretty much every other episode in this series, there is a content note for this one, right? I am going to talk a little bit about white supremacist violence because that is the main story behind the Goatman's Bridge. Kind of the most popular version of the urban legend, as it's told now, quick refresher, is this idea that a black man named Oscar Washburn raised goats and lived near the bridge with his family. And because he was a successful black man, he was targeted and murdered by the KKK. So that's the legend that I'm going to be talking about, tracing through these different online sources. And this is the story that's kind of just like accepted as historical fact by, paranormal TV shows when they come and investigate the bridge, and just like most people writing about the bridge online. But people who have done historical research have said that they have not been able to confirm the existence of a man named Oscar Washburn during the correct time period in the area. Although, as I mentioned and talked about in depth in the episode that I did called This Way to the Goatman, there was a lot of white supremacist violence and murders in the area that were since kind of suppressed. And the KKK was known to be very active in the area for a time. So if you want to know more about that, listen to the episode that's called This Way to the Goatman. So let's talk about how the story of Oscar Washburn became the main story about Goatman's Bridge. So on July 25th, 2008, someone who I am going to call Leland, which is not his real name, posted a 2-minute YouTube video telling the story of the Old Alton Bridge. I have not been able to find mentions of Oscar Washburn prior to 2008 or prior to this video. I did find someone with the same screen name as Leland's YouTube channel name posting the story on a forum on March 4th, 2008, though without the name Oscar Washburn. So we know that this is someone who was thinking a lot about this story. My assumption is that he was a UNT student because the University of North Texas is very close to the bridge, is in that area. And I kind of think that both of the main characters I'll be talking about in this story were likely UNT students. So let's see what he posted on that forum in 2008. The Goatman's Bridge is haunted. I went there back in high school with a group of people. We walked down one of the paths, and I swear something started chasing us. It might have just been a raccoon or something, but it was moving in our direction, and we all bolted out of there. Running across the bridge back to the car, and then on that gravel is damn scary. I always thought that the Goatman was a black goat farmer lynched by the KKK for putting a sign up on the bridge. And I am pretty sure that it took place in the 1930s, not the 1800s, because the bridge wasn't built until 1884, I think. There are news reports of abandoned cars on the bridge from the 1960s, for sure. And I think I mentioned this in a prior episode, but I have not been able to confirm the existence of any articles about abandoned cars from the 60s, though maybe I just haven't been able to find them for some reason. I don't know. I did search like newspapers.com and a lot of the big newspaper sites. So anyway, that's what Leland was posting prior to making the video, about 4 months before making the video. So then the video, which, then became very popular, made a number of claims, including this bit, which appears in the video as well as the first line of the video description, which has a transcript of the voiceover. So to read from that, November 15th, 1967. Police discover an abandoned car beside Old Alton Bridge, 5 miles south of Denton, Texas. A rash of mysterious disappearances are becoming alarmingly routine on a chilling stretch of road that is known by locals as the Goatman's Bridge. So again, the claim about this car. I was lucky enough to stumble upon a website called faxology.com, which had an article describing the deep dive that the podcast Myths, Mysteries, and Monsters went on to try to confirm this story. So this person couldn't find newspaper articles to back up the story, but they found one way that the rumor might have spread online. So apparently in 2010, there was a person who commented on a bunch of websites, basically just anything that mentioned the bridge that year. And the person said, quote, "There have been several disappearances on or around Old Alton Bridge, most notably one that occurred November 15th, 1967. The Denton newspaper at the time did an article on a car found abandoned on the bridge." So that's the same date as in the video. I'm not sure if this commenter was using the video as a source, or maybe this person was the source that the video used, like maybe they knew each other and spoke, or maybe they got their information from some third location that I have not been able to locate. But it sounds like, the first of these comments was on July 2nd, 2010 on randomconnections.com. The comment said that the car was a Mustang, because of course it was, and it also says that, quote, "There were lots of people that reported other missing persons linked to the Goatman's Bridge and the Goatman," with, of course, no additional detail. The commenter left a link to a website, goatmansbridge.com, which repeated the claim with no citation. And I was about to read the quote from the website, but I just realized it's word for word exactly the same as the text in the video description of the video that I already read. So I guess that kind of answers my question, right? Sounds like it came from the video. Or possibly the video cribbed from the website. So you might have had a little light bulb pop up in your head when you heard the date, November 15th, 1967. And you might be thinking, man, that date sounds really familiar. Why does that sound so familiar? So weirdly, or maybe not so weirdly, maybe it's probably not a coincidence, right? November 15th, 1967 is exactly 1 month before the Silver Bridge collapsed in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So maybe you're thinking, why am I suddenly talking about a bridge in West Virginia? If you are interested in the Mothman at all, you're probably familiar with the Silver Bridge collapse. And the Mothman is like one of the main cryptids, He's a big figure in the cryptid community, right? But in case you're not up to date with the Mothman lore, basically from November 15th, 1966, so there's that date again, November 15th, to December 15th, 1967, there were a series of incidents that were said to involve the Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. People saw the Mothman around the area, and it was said that he sort of presaged the collapse of the Silver Bridge on December 15th, 1967, which was a really tragic incident where 46 people died. And if you want to know more about this, check out the book, The Mothman Prophecy by John Keel. It goes into great length. So anyway, it's just a strange, unlikely coincidence that there's a connection between the dates of the Mothman sighting and the supposed disappearance near the Goatman's Bridge. It's not lost on me that there's a connection between the two legends. Both involve a animal-man hybrid as well as a bridge, and both are popular urban legends. So, if someone in 2008 wanted to make up this story, if they were so interested in, cryptids and stuff, that they made a YouTube video about it, then they're probably also the type of person who was familiar with the Mothman legend. So this is probably just a little Easter egg put in there by someone, whoever provided that original date. The 2008 video also links to the Association for the Study of Unexplained Phenomenon, ASUP, website. The original website is down, but you can still read it on the Wayback Machine. It's archived there. Notably, the article mentions neither Oscar Washburn nor a disappearance in 1967. It's an interesting read. I'll include a link to the archived version of the website, but as a source for the video, it doesn't make much sense because it doesn't really back up the claims made in the video. So I wanted to read this excerpt from the site. As most folk tales often do, the bridge takes on newer and more fanciful claims with every passing year. Some say that the bridge was once the site of an execution, another of a lynching. Others say that an old goat herder was murdered on the spot, while others believe it is the earthbound spirits of those killed in the Sam Bass Texas Rangers shootout nearby. There are even claims of satanic devil worship being performed on the site, raising the specter of the devil himself on the bridge. So that touches on a bunch of different things I've already talked about in this series, but I thought it was a really good summary of kind of like the grab bag of rumors that existed at that time about the bridge. And it's kind of an interesting contrast to like the much more codified, solidified version of the legend that you typically see now, where it's like, there was a man named Oscar Washburn. Here are some specific dates, here's specific info, etc. This definitely feels more like a gathering of folklore and stories, and it's less rigid, I guess, or like less confident in its assertions. And it seems to kind of just be reporting some of the weird local urban legends, right? So the site also talks about a possible historical Goatman, so, something kind of related to the Oscar Washburn story, as well as the Jack Kindle story, which I talked about in maybe like the 4th episode of this series. There was a tale about a goat herder who was, I believe, Creole, who was supposedly murdered prior to the construction of the bridge in the area. So this has some shades of that. In some research, we found that in the late 1800s, there was a man that reportedly lived out near the bridge who owned several goats. The residents of what are now the cities of Argyle and Denton thought that the man might be a bit of a loner and rather odd, but no one really knew all that much about him. The legend goes that he had a wife who died mysteriously, and that one night a group of drunken cowboys found the old man out crossing the bridge, herding his goats, and drove the animals off the bridge, killing them in the fall. Apparently, hearing about this, the county sheriff went out to check on the man's welfare, but found neither the man nor the goats dead or alive. Shortly afterwards, so the stories go, a family was passing over the bridge at night and encountered the old man, or at least his apparition, standing in front of them, a goat's head tucked under each arm. But all of this is internet talk without corroboration, Blair explains. The sheriff's archives made no mention of the event. So this has some similarities to, off the top of my head, if I'm remembering correctly, some of the Goatman stories from nearby Plano, Texas, I believe. If you listen to the episode that I did a few episodes ago, which I believe I called Who is the Goatman? I talk about all different Goatman legends, including several local ones, like local to the Goatman's Bridge. And this kind of has some similarities to one of the other Goatman stories I told from the area. And this also meshes with some of the older reports I found about the bridge, in which the Goatman seems to maybe be white, or at least his race isn't mentioned, which, in the context of a killing, it seems like if this person were black, it would be mentioned. So that's interesting. That seems to be something that changed with the 2008 video. And also, for the record, there have also been reports of the lynching of white people in the area. So I have seen some older stories that do seem to claim that a white Goatman had been lynched. Now, of course, it wasn't as frequent as racial lynchings of black people, but there have been 4 known lynching events of white people in Denton County since its founding, and the reason for white lynchings was typically horse theft. According to Micah Carlson Crittenden's University of North Texas master's thesis, which was published in May 2020, the thesis is called The Tall Grass West of Town, Racial Violence in Denton County During the Rise of the Second Ku Klux Klan. According to that, due to shifts in the public perception of white criminality and lynching as a violation of due process, white lynchings in Denton County stopped in 1880 and were never resumed. So context for that, right? And the website had some other mentions of the bridge's hauntings, which aren't part of the popular legends now, so it felt worth mentioning. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, the secondary visits have raised more questions than they might otherwise have answered, including additional photographic anomalies and cold spots on bright sunny days where the physical environmental data would suggest it impossible. They've also recorded the sound of horses' hooves crossing the bridge where there are no horses present, and one investigator, walking with her German Shepherd dog, has seen a horseman dressed in dark clothing galloping toward them, then disappearing without leaving tracks on the path. Both the dog and I saw and heard him, but he disappeared as he made a turn under some bushes and didn't emerge on the other side. The ground was damp and hoof prints should have been obvious, but I couldn't find any. So that's really interesting to me. This idea of this mysterious horseman, I haven't seen this anywhere else, but I love it. So anyway, all of this to say, it's kind of fascinating to me that this 2008 video links to a paranormal investigation site that has a lot of interesting things to say about the bridge, but does not back up its claims. And that's just, a friendly reminder whenever you're reading something online, check its sources. Because, when talking about a haunting, the stakes are pretty low, but, sometimes people cite sources that have nothing to do with what they're talking about. So, folks online have said that this 2008 video just added some additional background details to the existing legend, but it's wild that those details have congealed into this almost monolithic urban legend nowadays. And I mean, it's been helped along by Ghost Adventures and BuzzFeed Unsolved repeating the legends, and, those are such huge shows that of course it's spread even further. Also, I mentioned, I think in the first episode, that there is a strange synchronicity, like a personal synchronicity tied in with all of this. So to touch on that, so reminder, I'm from the area where this bridge is, and some folks online have given a name for the person who supposedly uploaded this video. Now, I have lived in New York City for my entire adult life, so I left the area after high school, before this version of the legend became really popular. I had never heard of the Old Alton Bridge until a few years ago. So I'm not really in touch with a lot of people from my hometown. But the name that people mentioned as the originator of this video sounded familiar to me. So I texted one of the two people who I went to high school with, who I'm still in touch with. And sure enough, my friend was like, "Oh yeah, that person was my next door neighbor when we were growing up, and we're friends." It's just a bizarre synchronicity because I'm only in touch with two people who I went to high school with, and both of them grew up a couple houses, 1 to like 3 houses down from this person. They all grew up on the same street. So that's just a weird thing. And I didn't live in that neighborhood. I lived a few neighborhoods over. So, that synchronicity sort of seemed wild to me because, of course, like I said, I grew up in the area of this bridge, but, it's suburban Texas. It's a pretty populous area. So it is kind of unusual that I would have a personal connection to this person. Now, this person has said that he did not upload this video. I have since been able to independently confirm that the YouTube channel belongs to someone who this person knew, but it was not him who uploaded the video. So I'm mentioning this not just because of the weird synchronicity, but also just to be clear, to kind of set the record straight. If you Google this and find people mention by name a person who supposedly uploaded the video, that information is not correct. For all I know, since they knew each other, they could have worked on the video together. I mean, anything's possible, but I don't really have any evidence of that, so I can't and won't speculate. But it felt worth correcting that since multiple people online name this person. So anyway, starting from this initial rumor that was immortalized in the form of a YouTube video, the new version of the legend started to spread widely. By August 27th, 2008, a month later, a commenter on the website pbase.com mentioned Oscar Washburn and the specific date, November 15th, 1967, that was mentioned in the YouTube video. And by 2009, people had posted the YouTube video to the same forum thread that Leland had originally posted on a handful of times, And by the last page of that thread, because, the forum threads can go on for a pretty long time, people can keep updating it for years, etc. But by the last page of that thread, people were mentioning Oscar Washburn by name. So it had kind of come, not full circle, but this version of the story was becoming more and more predominant. But apparently, this was not the only video that was uploaded in the late 2000s or early 2010s about the Old Alton Bridge. I'm going to recap a little bit of the story about the trickster elements that I originally told in the beginning of this series, in the first episode of this series. So if you're like binge listening to this, sorry to be a little bit repetitive, but in real time, it's been several months since I told that story, so it's worth repeating. So on March 4th, 2022, a Reddit user who I will call Bob, not his real name, posted 23 links to a video and or a YouTube playlist containing a video that he claimed contains the real story behind the Goatman's Bridge. Some of the posts that he commented on were about the Old Alton Bridge, or Texas hauntings, or similar topics, and then others were totally unrelated, and they just seemed to have a keyword that made it come up in a search. But based on a reply that someone posted the next day, the video was deleted within 24 hours. His channel has also been deleted, and he hasn't posted on Reddit under that account since March 4th. He'd had that account since 2008, but the only thing he'd posted that was visible was something on a World of Warcraft subreddit. And also on March 4th, 2022, when he was logged in to, put the video link on different threads, he got into a few arguments with people about metaphysical topics. And this person seems to have an interest in metaphysical topics that are somewhat obscure, but even to me, someone who's very interested in the paranormal, also very boring. So my eyes kind of glaze over a little bit when I read his stuff about non-Goatman's Bridge related topics. It's stuff that feels a little bit hard to follow, kind of has the vibe of a lot of the remember the pre-2012, it's gonna be the end of the world in December 2012, that sort of vibe, as well as stuff in the kind of Tulpa, egregore, online type of vibe as well, if that means anything to you. So anyway, what was going on with this person on Reddit? As far as I can tell, it seems like Bob made a YouTube video about the Old Alton Bridge, and then he wanted to drive traffic to it by posting it on Reddit, and then for some reason, he decided to delete it. The original video was called The First Goatman's Bridge Video Ever Uploaded on YouTube, 2011, and that's what I got. That's what it was called. I guess he had previously posted a video on YouTube in 2011 and had taken it down, and this was some sort of re-upload or re-upload with additional materials. So this was really interesting to me because I was researching this topic. I've been researching the Old Alton Bridge since February, heavily since February. I, of course, had done some research on it. I guess I've been doing light research on it since 2020. But I started researching this series in earnest in February, so 6 months ago. And I was doing a lot of digging in March, just a couple weeks after he had posted this stuff on Reddit. So it was very intriguing to me because I was like, man, he was just posting this stuff and he's already taken it down. I'm trying to do this research, etc. So I tried to private message Bob on Reddit on April 4th, 2022, but he doesn't accept private messages or didn't accept private messages. So I chatted him instead and he never answered me. And I can say that as of August 6th, 2022, when I was writing the script for this episode, he had deleted his account completely. He may have done that before 8/6, but that's just when I noticed it while finalizing this script. Oh, also worth noting, when people delete their accounts on Reddit, their comments often still appear on the platform, and it just says deleted instead of their username or user deleted, something like that. But I was able to confirm that at least some of the comments that he posted under his old username were also deleted. So it looks like he went in and deleted his comments and then went in and deleted his account. I had saved direct links to his individual comments as well as screen grabs of his comments. So I was able to test that. And, I clicked into the links. It said that the comments were deleted. And then when I searched for his username, it said the account had been deleted as well. I don't know if that has anything to do with my series here. Probably not, because then I think he would have mentioned something about having listened to the series and his other online presences or other social media outlets. And, we know that Bob has a history of posting things and then perhaps impulsively deleting them because that's exactly what he did with his YouTube video. But, on the off chance that you're listening to this, Bob, hello, welcome. If you have anything you'd like to say, my email is buriedsecretspodcast@gmail.com. So anyway, what did Bob have to say about this legend? Unfortunately, I was not able to watch the video that he posted since he deleted it, but I was able to read the video description on the Wayback Machine. I feel like that's been the theme of this episode. Most of the websites I've been talking about, I think pretty much all of them except for the forum I was talking about, have been taken offline and are now just on the Wayback Machine. And, luckily for us, the video description was a wall of text that was almost 900 words long, which is unusually long for a YouTube video description. So here's how the video description begins. This series is the true story of ... how I became the Goatman. Old Alton Bridge, aka Goatman's Bridge, is a now infamous old haunted bridge near Denton, Texas. However, it wasn't so well known for a long time. For years, there was only one video on YouTube that even referenced this location or the local legend until I started posting videos with my evidence of this mysterious place's anomalies, starting in 2011. From 2008 to mid-2011, when you searched for Goatman's Bridge on here, only one result popped up, and it was a video by Leland. I'm just going to say the name I made up for this person, Leland, posted in 2008. Then he talks about his videos, which he posted a few years later. This was in 2011, and although Old Alton Bridge has had a reputation for decades locally as an old bridge near some scenic hiking trails that some locals claim to have heard a noise once in the 80s or 90s or saw a weird light in the woods once while fishing, it was just that place on Old Alton Road thousands drive by daily that you could once actually drive over. No Goatman's Bridge legend ever existed or is ever mentioned in any of your Texas legend / myth or ghost story books, even those published as late as the early 2010s. So I take issue with his claim that no legend at all existed, but I have been able to confirm that it seemed to be a much lesser known urban legend. Like I said, I lived there for quite some time and had never heard of it. And also the stories of the hauntings seem like they were more scattershot in prior tellings. And I talked about this in episode 1 of the series, but just to recap, the Old Alton Bridge and the Goatman weren't mentioned in the older books that I have access to about the paranormal or urban legends in Texas. So I have 2 books by the folklorist J. Frank Dobie, Legends of Texas Volume 2, Pirates, Gold, and Other Tales, and Tales of Old Time Texas. And they just have stories about Sam Bass when talking about Denton. No Goatman. I have the book Best Tales of Texas Ghosts by Docia Schultz Williams, which was published in 1998 and has plenty of ghost stories about the area, but no mention of Denton County or the Old Alton Bridge at all. I looked at the 2012 book, The Big Book of Texas Ghost Stories by Alan Brown, which doesn't mention the Old Alton Bridge. I looked at the 2008 book, Haunted Texas, Ghosts and Strange Phenomena of the Lone Star State by Alan Brown, which has no mention of the Old Alton Bridge, even though it does mention another Denton haunting, the haunting of Bruce Hall, which is one of the dorms at the University of North Texas. And on the other hand, the book Haunted Plano by Mary Jacobs, which was published in 2018, has a big section about the Old Alton Bridge, even though it's not in Plano. And it also talks about the Plano Goatman legend. So, Bob's story kind of checks out, right? It does seem like books didn't mention the story, it just wasn't a big thing. And, people who knew the legends of the area didn't know this one. So to continue reading from the video description, back to my video. This one here is the first of 2 videos that for several years, if you were to search Goatman's Bridge on YouTube, only 3 results appeared. Leland's and the 2 you're about to watch in this series. This video, titled Paranormal Activity at Goatman's Bridge, and its follow-up response, Still Don't Believe, quickly went viral and became the top search results for the following couple years. My paranormal experiences became a local sensation in Denton, Texas, and remained the most viewed videos for a while, even after others began to upload their own experiences. More articles and blogs were being published online about the legendary Goatman's Bridge, and they all said the same copy-pasted legend, along with some of the other ones mentioning it being, quote, currently surveilled by DAPS, aka Denton Area Paranormal Society. Never heard or saw them in the thousands of days and nights I would spend obsessing over this place, but okay, DAPS. So I obviously don't know Bob and don't mean to be mean or anything, but I do get a sense of some self-importance coming from this text, right? Like, this is someone who definitely sees himself as kind of like an expert on the bridge. Which I guess, if you have spent tons and tons of time there, I guess maybe that's not inaccurate. So I want to keep reading from this video description. Over the years, it gained more notoriety as I began to uncover and post more of its mystery, opening thousands of people's minds in person who came to visit and happened to stop by to have a chat with, quote, that ghost hunting guy and his beagle always at the bridge. The first few years I spent out there, it was mostly barren at night, void of all life or cars driving by or people coming to visit. This was completely opposite of what the area is like in the daytime. People did trickle in most nights sporadically every few hours or so. They would pull into the parking lot, get out, turn on all the flashlights, and slowly walk toward the bridge to, quote, see what this was all about. Most who were brave enough to even make the 30-second journey to the bridge would stand on it, and I'm dead serious, for a minute or two, and would immediately leave, not bothering with even the well-traversed in the daytime hiking trail to either side along the river. If they did, they always lasted about 5 minutes and got spooked, running back to their cars. So I think this is a really interesting and valid point. This idea that, like, so many people, when confronted with the paranormal or when being like, oh, I want to, investigate the paranormal, there can sometimes be a tendency to perhaps not spend a ton of time at a location or only go somewhere once. And I do think that there's definitely something to be said for going back to a place over and over, really getting to know the place, really getting to know what's normal or not normal for a location. And I'm definitely annoyed whenever I read something online talking about any kind of haunted place and someone's like, I went there once and it's not haunted. Because it's like, well, one, it's like awful hard to prove a negative, and two, how long were you there? 5 minutes, etc. So I think he has some very valid points here. So to keep reading, I would spend countless hours there and watched all this happen every night from the bridge. Same types of people, same cliche expectations, and the same reactions to nothing really. I would laugh and think to myself, another one bites the dust, I guess. Many times, however, I would get lucky and not have a single other person come visit the bridge, or even a car drive by for an entire night. It was just me, my equipment, my dog, and the spirits, who grew more accustomed to my energy presence the longer I spent out there, and got to know what this place was, how beautiful it truly was at night, when the rest of the world just came looking for a quick jump scare, or half man, half goat, ghostly headlights, knock 3 times to summon the demon, goat hoof sounds, shadow figure, etc. The legend quickly began to spin, and soon I would realize I set events in motion that nobody ever, all caps, could have expected. Wow, what a cliffhanger. I bet you're really excited to find out what happened next. Well, that's it. That's all the information I have. Apparently, the video series was going to answer everything, and maybe the video that he did post did, but, you can't watch the video that this description went with anymore, since it was deleted the day after it was posted, having garnered 39 views when it was archived by the Wayback Machine. So I guess, people on Reddit did look at it, but I've been able to, rustle up a bit more information. Oh, also, ironically, if you search Bob's username on YouTube, the cached metadata on DuckDuckGo, which is the main search engine that I like to use, says username is resurrected from the digital grave. I'm kind of redacting usernames and stuff here because I have been able to find some personally identifiable information about some of the people involved in these stories. And if you do decide to dig this stuff up and find this information about people, remember, don't do that. Don't harass anybody. Don't give anyone a hard time, etc. So anyway, that's why I'm doing that. And that's why my sources are not listed in the same way on this episode as they usually are. Like, I listed some sources, but I've tried not to put anything too personally identifiable or anything that contains people's usernames as much as possible, just out of respect for people's privacy. But anyway, the username is resurrected from the digital grave thing is ironic to me. I think he had deleted his account previously and then recreated it and then deleted it again. And I guess I should say, when I originally wrote a lot of this, Bob had deleted his YouTube channel, but as of August 6th, 2022, he seems to have reactivated his YouTube channel. There's nothing on the channel. Nothing has been posted. There are no playlists. All there is one single piece of information on the About page, which is that he joined YouTube on July 15th, 2022. Oh, and I guess there's one other thing about his YouTube channel, which is that he added a header that has a picture of a Goatman. So who knows, maybe this series will appear on his channel. I'll try to keep an eye on it, and I will update you if there is any movement there. Also, while I was working on this script, I searched for him again, just to see if Bob's been up to anything else. And I discovered that he made a TikTok back in July, and he has posted 2 videos, both of which show a shirtless man wearing a cow mask and hanging out in the woods. Notably, he has a tattoo around his belly button that looks a lot like the tattoo that Sully Erna, the lead singer of the nu metal band Godsmack, has. So if we're trying to paint a picture in our mind palaces of who this person might be, this is perhaps a person who might, at some point in his life, have felt very inspired by Godsmack. I'm not trying to shame anyone for their tattoos. I'm just always delighted anytime I can find something that makes me think of a nu metal band from that era, right? So the TikTok account has just the 2 videos, and it has 5 followers, so you are not missing anything there. And wouldn't you guess it, both videos were posted on July 17th, and there have been no new videos since then, which seems to be a pattern for Bob, right? Like, he reactivated or made a new version of his YouTube channel on July 15th. He made a TikTok on July 17th and posted 2 videos and hasn't done anything with either since. So who knows? That was just a few weeks ago. Maybe something will happen. We'll see. Other than that, Bob did make a Twitter account in June 2022, so just a couple months ago, and he has tweeted a lot about various topics. And it was mostly a bunch of tweets in early to mid-June, and then he hasn't tweeted since, which also matches his basic pattern as a internet user. But so he's tweeted stuff about the invocation of Zalgo, which I guess is a creepypasta from 2004. He also mentioned the Goatman's Bridge in a handful of his tweets, but the tweets weren't coherent enough for me to glean anything from them or for them to be worth me reading them here. I kind of think he might have used predictive text to create some of these tweets because they don't, I've read some of his writing. He's a perfectly fine writer, but a lot of his tweets don't quite make sense. They don't scan as normal sentences. And I think he maybe has been playing around with predictive text there. But don't worry, his Twitter's not a total bust. He did reply to a paranormal investigation show with a very interesting response. So he replied, he said that he had really been inspired by this show and had been a big fan, as well as of other shows. So to read from this, among many others who are now just making the situation worse for those of us who are personally involved in trying to fix it. This place was relatively unknown before I uploaded the first video about it 12 years ago on YouTube. Please, for the love of all things under the sun, all caps, stop going there, people. There's a ton of periods between each of those words. I cannot fix what was done, all caps, again. What we started 12 years ago has gotten out of control. All my old favorite TV/YouTube ghost hunters are falling victim to this energy vortex, 2 exclamation points. So that's interesting. I think, this is someone with a real interest in energy stuff and maybe spirits and demons and stuff. So, I mentioned this in the beginning of the series, but I suspect there might be some mental health stuff surrounding some of Bob's posts. But I'm also very curious about what this supposed story is, like what does Bob think was awakened 12 years ago when he first started going to the bridge, and what did he do to unawaken it? That's not the right word. To help keep people safe from it, etc. I don't know. I would love to hear your theories if you have some. It's definitely interesting, and I don't really have answers, but I will keep an eye on it, and I'll let you know if there are any further developments. So anyway, I have traced this story back as close to its source as I can, and I've tried to, follow the weird twists and turns that this tale has taken. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that could be said about like the internet and like what the internet might have done to urban legends. Like before, I would imagine that storytelling in urban legends was much more diffuse and much more regional, right? Like, and not even regional. That's not the word I'm looking for. Much more like centered in certain social groups, right? Because like I grew up in the region and no one I knew was talking about the Old Alton Bridge. No one at my school. And like I was always into like paranormal type things, right? Like I did dress up like a witch for my freshman year speech class to give a speech about the Salem witch trials, right? Like I definitely knew people who knew I was kind of weird and who were kind of weird themselves. And I feel like I would have heard from them if they knew this story, right? So what that says to me is that it was circulating at different high schools, or maybe even like within different groups at different high schools. So like for whatever reason, it seems like it wasn't a thing at my high school, or maybe just like not among the people I knew, etc. And so like word of mouth takes these like really different, interesting paths than the internet, where just like anyone can like type in Old Alton Bridge, or like anyone can turn on a paranormal investigation TV show and like watch this story of the Old Alton Bridge, which has, this very high production value, slick story about, this Goatman, et cetera, et cetera. And, the tale gets solidified that way. But I kind of think it's so much more interesting to find all these variations in a story and to find all these, like different versions, and to also see a real-time example of how the internet may have like created more monolithic urban legends and like more monolithic ideas about the paranormal and about different supposedly haunted locations. And I'm not saying like the internet is bad or anything, but I think it's easy to forget how much of an effect it can have on the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we tell each other, and kind of like the beliefs that we have about an area. And like, I think it can homogenize things and kind of like prune out other versions of stories that just for whatever reason don't go viral or don't get the same traction, etc. So anyway, that is the weirdness that I wanted to talk about this week. I'm probably just going to do one more episode about the Old Alton Bridge. I think next time, the week after next is probably going to be the final episode in the Old Alton Bridge series. There's definitely other Denton weirdness that I want to talk about, but, there's so much more I can say about the bridge, but when I was going through a lot of my notes and records and stuff, it started to feel a little repetitive, like when I was going through some of the paranormal investigation stories, etc. Maybe I'll do some follow-ups sometime, especially if I learn more. If this Bob story ends up continuing to develop, I might do a follow-up. But I think I am ready to move on to another topic. So next episode, I'll wrap up the Old Alton Bridge, and then I'm going to take September off. So there'll be no new episodes in September because I'm doing a lot of travel in September. My sister is getting married, and that month is going to be really hectic. So I'll take that month to do a bit of research, kind of set up some of the next stuff that I want to talk about in the podcast, and then I'll hop back on in October. So until next time, you can check out the show notes at buriedcircuitspodcast.com. It has the script for this episode along with sources, though my sources are a little bit redacted for this episode. to, like I said, protect people's privacy. And, you know, if you have any stories about the Old Alton Bridge or want to say hello, please feel free to email me at buriedsecretspodcast@gmail.com. And if you liked this episode, please tell your friends about it. Please rate and review wherever you're listening to podcasts, but especially on Apple Podcasts or Spotify podcasts. And thanks so much for listening.